Hello, everybody. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Georgiana.
And this is Wholehearted Loving, where we teach you simple tools for self-love and compassion to grow the muscles you need to be with big feelings, triggers, and overwhelming sensations in your body.
Whether you have active challenges in your life or relationships, or whether you're just here to learn to be kinder to yourself, we pull out all the little things that make life feel better, the things that give you a sense of hope and direction.
So if you're too hard on yourself or on others,
if you want to feel real, deep connection in your life and relationships,
even if you want to reprogram your inner critic while you're sleeping,
this is a great place to be.
So welcome, and we hope this episode brings you just the tidbit you needed today.
Enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today we're going to be talking about learning how to include love and care in your hard moments, both past and present moments. You can find self-reflection prompts for this episode and every episode on our Instagram at Wholehearted Loving, and you can learn more about us and how to practice with us live on our website at wholeheartedloving.com. And before we get started, we're going to do a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other and this podcast.
Maybe there's a new one, a different one I want to do, different than planned. Okay, so this is the energy of what's happening. I had an idea of what we could do for a body connection practice because that one felt right in the moment, but the moment changed. So are you cool if I walk us through what's new in the moment? Because I see you doing it already.
Yes, I'm there with you.
So I was told recently, and maybe you can confirm this stuff, that I do this thing with my shoulders when I'm happy.
Yes.
I go like this.
You do. And sometimes you purse your lips and you look and you raise your eyebrows and you look all pleased. It's delightful.
So if we were to describe this as a body practice, how would you describe this?
We're bouncing our shoulders up and down.
Yeah. And just notice maybe what kind of energy that creates for you. Maybe that's energy in the body. I notice Steph has a smile. I have a hard time not smiling when I do this, I think. But like maybe for you, it's not necessarily that it brings a smile, but it creates some sort of experience in the body. I notice if I close my eyes, I can feel it a bit differently. My breath sort of deepens. And then it makes me sort of want to wiggle, right? So I'm sort of describing what's next, what comes next for me. Now I see like Steph's doing like a whole body bounce now.
What is the source of this glee? This feels universal and transcendent. Glee.
There's something
from
about
bouncing.
This, isn't it? I don't know. But I feel like it's probably harder to be really angry and annoyed when you bounce like this.
Oh, yeah. Great thing to introduce into a fight.
Yeah.
And we fight while bouncing.
Well, I've heard of people suggesting, and maybe you've even said this before, can you fight while using funny voices?
Yeah. Or no words at all. No language. Yeah.
My RMT, I love him. He had suggested try having an argument with someone while you're both laying on your backs on the floor with your fingers intertwined under your head. He's like, just give it a try, see what happens.
That's fun. Yeah.
And basically what's happening, I mean, without me totally understanding the science of it, is you're bringing regulation to your body. Mm-hmm. At the same time as trying to use as part of the brain that you need in order to like be really angry and like create an argument in your mind. And the two are very hard to do together at the same time.
Totally. Well, and you're interrupting your conscious patterns, right? And doing something that your subconscious associates differently.
Yeah. And so it's not to say that whatever you need to say to each other is unimportant and shouldn't be said, but it's that probably whatever is important and needs to be said can be better conveyed and better heard if you're both a little bit more regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Story of our lives, Gigi.
So yeah.
Okay.
And now I'm like, oh, so my ottoman has a bit of a give. So I don't know if it's different. Are you sitting on something hard or something soft?
Soft.
Because I'm like, what is it like to pretend you're bouncing on one of those bouncy balls that you sit on?
Oh, I love doing that.
And I wonder, I'm not sitting on like a regular chair right now, but I'm just curious. Like if you were sitting on something firmer, does it still give that feeling of lightness or playfulness or something? Right?
Yeah, I wonder how much of this cushioning is my own butt.
I don't know.
Chair.
We could test it out. Mystery. So we're, I think, pretty regulated to begin with right now, and we're adding some balancing. It's sort of connecting us to the state of lightness and playfulness. We're not always in that state. Sometimes we are angry, frustrated, irritated. And I'm going to try that out next time when I'm feeling a bit like, heavier emotionally. What happens when I bring a bit of bounce to whether I'm standing or sitting or something, and see what it does to my nervous system. But my sense is it's also like giving the body something different to do other than tense, right? It gives the body it creates some space for energy to move. Mm-hmm. And that's often what's happening when we're in that fight or flight is like there's energy that needs to move through us. But if we're not aware, we tend to clampen down even harder and tighten and get more rigid and sort of walk around the house fuming, but it has a rigidity to it, right?
Yes.
And that energy doesn't get to move and create more space in the body.
Yeah. There feels something fundamental here for sure. I know my instinct is to bounce a baby. If a baby's fussing, bounce the baby. There must be something in our physiology that's primed for bouncing and soothing.
I think so, for sure. Yes.
That's nice. And what a nice thing to do when you're noticing that you're feeling worked up, your nervous system is ramping up, and you want to feel settled, to bounce yourself like the lovely baby that you would bounce if it was on your knee.
Yes. I like that idea. I've done it actually, and you could try this too if you wanted to right now, is in moments where I'm feeling sort of upset, bothered, feeling a bit off, I pick up a pillow and I hold it like it's a baby, and I offer a little bouncing and a little patting. Like, you know how you pat babies on the back of the butt? Yeah. And that changes things.
Yeah.
Right? So neat how movement and posture can bring on a different nervous system state for us.
So much,
Which reminds me, I used all these tools recently when we had an earthquake.
Oh, yes.
And maybe we can do an episode about that.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds like it was scary where you were, for sure.
It was. Definitely
imagine needing tools to deal with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And using these tools, I mean, this is really, we're talking about giving ourselves some pause and some love, which is also what the episode is about. We haven't typically, when we come to this point in our lives where we're finding ourselves doing this sort of work, we haven't felt so overwhelmed with love and self-support that that's the muscle that we don't need to work on right now. That's the one we actually want to be growing our muscles for being able to experience and remember and focus on love and care instead of the negative things that are so easy for us to focus on when things feel hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are wired to focus on what feels hard in the moment, what was hard, what felt like a hardship and probably was a hardship. So we're not discounting that things are actually hard. What I've noticed in sort of my growth is the ability to be able to, after the fact, sometimes even during, pull out what the lesson is, what the win is, what the, I tend to, after hardship, feel like I know myself a bit better. like I know how to show up for myself a little bit better. And that was a muscle to grow of like, how can I use, like I recently heard someone say like, never let your suffering be wasted.
Mm.
And I think what he was meaning by that is like, there's a way, like we're going to have hard things happen, but there's a way you can connect a little bit more deeply to yourself, know yourself a little bit more, learn how to show up a little bit more for yourself through all your hardships. And so I think that some of us have grown that muscle to be able to, after the fact, look back and say, hey, there was something in that for me. It served a purpose, even though we might not want that to have happened. We might not wish that upon anyone else. But like we got something out of it. This is a little bit of extra of, can we also look back or look during and notice, grow that muscle to notice what are some signs of love and care during this hardship, or right after this hardship, or while I'm recovering from this hardship. And those are usually the things that we're not as oriented to, or even if we do notice them, we're not as practiced in like allowing ourselves to feel how they feel in the body and letting that be. I always use the piggy bank analogy. Like it's like, emotional regulation piggy bank.
Yeah.
That like you have to feel some goodness to be with what's hard.
I think we try to do that with what I think of as the gratitude bypass. So when something bad has happened and we immediately, understand all the inner workings of why that happened and why it was a benefit to us, even though it hurt. And so we're grateful for this heinous event that felt so awful. And then we're trying to move past these big bad feelings that we don't know how to be with. And we don't get to be with this lovely part that you're describing, which are the signs of love.
Yeah, and it's very different. I think we were talking about this episode being widening the lens to include love and care during hard times. Whether you're reflecting on previous hard times or you're currently in a hard time. So to me, widening the lens is to include love and care is very different than bypassing and like suppressing the hard time and only looking at the love and care.
Totally. Yeah.
Very different things.
Yeah. Super important. This reminds me of the way my dad has structured his brain. I remember he told me when he was 24, he realized one day if he was in a bad mood, like it didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. So he just sort of decided in that moment to never be in a bad mood kind of thing, which, I mean, we can talk about bypassing and things, but the point is that when he's had to be in the hospital for arguably and objectively very unpleasant treatments, the thing that he remembers is how nice the nurses were, or how nice the, whatever experience with whatever people he was involved with there. And that's the memory he leaves with. And when he went back, what was the treatment like? He can't remember. All he remembers was the nice lady,
And like, I think that we have something to learn from your dad in that sense, because for a lot of us, that muscle's so weak. It's not very well practiced. And of course, like you said, we could talk about that. If someone uses that strategy as like their way to deal with everything, right? And to never feel what feels hard and notice how it feels in the body and what kind of tending to it needs, that's a different story. But imagine knowing, hey, I went through something hard and like I got through it. And what I'm taking away from that time was when I sit and I think back at that time, I feel like the warmth rush over me, remembering how well I was cared for by the nurses.
Yeah.
Right? Even you, like, right, I don't know, I felt something saying that. I felt it in my body. So I'm curious, as his daughter, knowing that he went through hard things, and like, what is it like just to be present to, my dad was well cared for by the nurses? Like, what happens in your body just being with that for a moment?
Oh, it feels very warm.
Yeah.
Expansive.
Yeah. And like, I know you've talked to us about, maybe not on the podcast, but in our circle of friends, like, oh, dad's had this happen, or he's gone through that, or he's going through this. And it was important to tell us what was going on, but maybe we hadn't stopped that long to like pause with this and how this feels in the body.
Totally. Yeah. It's not a socially regular event to pause with these kinds of things in the body. And, even when you were suggesting this topic, I feel the range of unhelpful yeah buts arrive, which is so hard to uncouple like logic from feeling, which is really the source of everything. And the point of this exercise is to be with those warm feelings, not to notice objections that might arise because of some information related to these warm feelings. The point is spending time accruing points in the piggy bank of presence and pleasant feelings, because that has a cumulative effect.
Yes. Well, let's chat a little bit about yeah buts and people's hesitations and resistance, because I think that's human and normal and makes sense. And we've seen it, lots. We've had our own resistance to things. I'm thinking of people who tell us, for example, say I was in the hospital and like you were asking me, what was a sign? You've gone through some hard things. What are some signs of there being love and care for you at the hospital? And I could be like, oh, there's a moment. And often this is what we see in our clients, a moment of like the face changes. Like there's a moment of brightness of like, oh, like I remember that nurse. She was so nice. And they're able to like articulate that one thing, or we see the shift in the face. So we're like, what was that? Or you want to share what that was? And they'll be able to share. And then very quickly but then there was this other bad thing that happened. But not every nurse was like that. Right? And that's such a neat moment to practice with. And what we'll usually practice with people is like, did you notice that like the first moment that thought came to mind of there was a kind nurse, your face changed? Right? Did you notice how that felt? Like it's okay that it also sort of got dragged into something else quite quickly. But like, would it be okay to rewind and just pause with that first moment? And that's the thing is most people, if you sort of go back and look for a moment of care or support, they can find a moment. It's just that they go very quickly. The old habit pattern is to rush very quickly past that moment to the next hard thing or the next worry or the thing that wasn't that good thing.
Yeah.
And so we just help people slow things down and rewind a little bit and pause. And like, would it be okay to just feel that for a moment? That moment where you're like, oh, there was that one nurse. And people are like, okay, like I'm open to that. And they feel it and they're like, oh, that feels really nice. Okay. And if you wanted to now think about the 5 other nurses who weren't very nice, that's okay. But you've got that moment in the piggy bank now.
Right.
And you've also grown the muscle to not only pause and rewind and sit with that good moment a little bit longer, you recognizing that you do have an old pattern of doing that.
Yeah.
Right? When people start seeing that pattern, oh, I didn't realize that I have a pattern of noticing it and then very quickly brushing it aside and focusing on the hard thing.
I feel like this is such a natural response. So an experience that I've had in life, which I think is pretty common, is that no one is able to be with much of anything. So it's this constant, what is that? Like an Ouroboros, a snake eating its own tail. So if you're feeling bad, someone's not being with you about that. They're suggesting you look at something that's good and forget about the bad, look at the good thing. If something's good, they're like, oh, look out, because the good thing won't last very long. So you better prepare for the bad thing, which is actually what we're talking about next episode, I think, the highs and lows.
Yeah.
So what a natural response that we've created in our minds, that when we're with a feeling, whatever it is, we're quickly moving on to the next one, right? We're constantly on the run. And then the moment we experience being with whatever it is, being with a hard feeling, being with a good feeling, there's this relaxation. Whatever emotion might be paired with it, there's this like I can be here feeling, which is just such a relief on its own.
Right? We're growing the I can be here feeling and I can be here belief in ourselves, because our old patterning is I have to run away from this and I have to chase something that hopefully feels better than this. And those take a lot of energy and effort. They're exhausting. Along with doing everything else that you need to do in life to keep your life functional, like that's a lot of energy to be expending every moment trying to run away from a feeling or chase a better feeling, right? What if we were to grow the muscle to be able to be with this one? I wanted to touch on what you said earlier about people's resistance and the yeah buts. Mm-hmm. And also bypassing with gratitude and how this is different, right? So we facilitate a bunch of group calls and priming the body for peace. And sometimes people share things that are really personal and very challenging on many levels. There's many levels, many many variables of like things that are just hard things that you and I cannot change, hard things that the other fellow people in the group do not have the power to change. And things that can change, but would just take time, more time than what we have in that moment in a call. And what I think you and I have always noticed in those calls is when someone shares what's going on, it's what's hard. And they're sort of in this space of, what would you say? A little bit of feeling overwhelmed and helpless. And really pull towards like really sitting in the depths of it. Like, this is hard. They're probably at a point where they could talk for a long time about all the things that are hard. And as a group supporting this person, we can have all the empathy in the world for this person. And we can't change the circumstance, right? And it's been really neat to play with this practice of looking for love and care. And how we do that is we really acknowledge that this person is going through something tough that actually a lot of us can't even fathom and imagine, right? Many of us have the privilege and the luxury to not experience some hardships that other people are experiencing in life. And how do we meet that person with, I see you as a human. I see you in so much pain right now. I wish I could take some of that away for you by changing your circumstances, but I can't. And I also know that you see that you can't. And sometimes that leaves you feeling helpless. But would you be willing in this moment to notice what else is present here? Right? Knowing that we can't change your circumstances, even though we wish we could. But would it be okay to notice whether there's any part of you that senses love and care here for you? And every time, it doesn't matter how dire the circumstances are, people find it. They feel something. They're like, oh, I hear it in your tone of voice, or I feel it in the energy of the group, or just the fact that you're giving me space to share about what's hard for me. I feel the love and care in that. And then we'll ask them, like, would it be okay to check in to see how that feels in your body, to pause with that, knowing that even despite the fact that you're going through some of the hardest stuff you've ever gone through in your life, in this moment, there's some love and care. And they feel that in their body, and you can see something shifting for them in their facial expression, in their energy. And people might say, oh, I felt some relief, a moment of relief. or I feel safer now. I feel like I can be here now. And we let them and we encourage them. We see if they want to hang in that feeling a little bit longer and enjoy it a little bit more. Right? And it's such a special moment. And I think something I get deep pleasure from doing is helping us remember, and we didn't change a single circumstance about your life. Right? You feel different. Do you notice what it's like to feel different right now? Better. Even though we couldn't change any circumstance of your life. And presencing to that for people has also been very powerful. Like, wow, like my system has this ability to shift into a different way of experiencing the moment, a different nervous system state. I can do that. When nothing else in my life has changed, my system has the ability to shift and orient to something different and actually feel the impact of orienting to something different, orienting to the fact that there is some love and care here in this moment. There is something here in the presence of these people that is less hard than when I'm not with them.
Yeah. It feels important for me to add my initial experiences of that sort of thing were not sunshine and roses and lollipops, So the point I want to make about that is that I could access, part of me was able to access that, even while the inner critic and inner judge and inner huge doubter was suggesting all of the opposite hard ass stuff that I believed, that parts of me believed, that the overwhelming parts of me believed, that still penetrated my psyche in some way that was practically helpful in the moment and had this cumulative effect with the, just astounding results in positive feelings.
Well, what's really neat is that, like, on a thinking level, right? Sometimes we might be able to think the hardest things and be connected to something that's decent or better. But this is taking it to another level, which is like, what is it like to feel it in the body? That there's a little bit of love and care here right now. And like, that's the magic, is like people start feeling what it feels like to feel love and care present in the body. Like, oh, that's what that feels like. That's what relief feels like. So neat.
Yeah.
And it's like almost like they leave a call feeling a little bit more resourced to go out and face the reality of life. Like, they know, like, we're not brainwashing people. We're not like in some spiritual bypass land. Like, they know circumstances of my life have not changed, but I feel there was just a little bit of reprieve and relief. And oh, that was sort of nice. Not just nice to feel, but nice to know that my body has that capacity to experience that even during hard times.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your comment, Steph. You said, in the beginning, it wasn't sunshine and butterflies or roses or whatever it was. So, like, what was it like?
This feeling that comes to mind is like, ugh, like disbelief, and then I've got all this stuff around, like, I feel sensitive to inauthenticity, and if something is authentic but I don't believe it internally, it'll read as inauthentic. So it's this blech, right? I'm like, who are all these hippies in a circle, like, you're pretending to love me, you don't know me, but this feels pretty nice, and like, you are here and saying nice things, and okay, thanks. But it wasn't like I sat down in that circle going like, oh, I feel comfortable being loved and supported. Could we have a minute of that? It was like, I don't know if I trust this, but I'm here. Let's try it.
Well, that's what's cool, is that it's a lot easier for maybe like my system to sit in a group like that and like have someone help connect me to like hey, can you notice that there's love and support here? I might be very receptive to that and just feel that very deeply as warm dancing unicorns in my body quite quickly. That's easy. Not to say it's not practice for me too, but it's really cool for you to say, yeah, no, like all my inner critics, outer critics, everything was there. And I couldn't deny, like I was open. And what I mean is when I say I couldn't deny, it means you were open. You were at least somewhat open to, maybe something does feel sort of decent here. Maybe I could be okay with that.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll come back next week.
Yeah. Maybe.
But that's all it takes. That's all it takes is like bring your critic. It's okay. Even voice your critic. I'm sure you did as well.
Oh, yeah.
You told us about your critic and the judgmental parts and all the things. And like, I think you got to experience many reparative experiences where your critic was welcomed. Like, yeah, judge the shit out of this if you want to.
Anything. Nobody needed me to be any different. Like when you're expecting that argumentativeness or the, hey, move to the next feeling, and what you get instead is like, okay, there's nothing to make up. There's nowhere to go. Like you're just there. I had to figure out how to be with, because that's all we were doing.
There's nothing to fight, because no matter where you land, people are like, okay.
Yeah. When you're in a group of people who are just humans being, and you're hustling around trying to do a bunch of things, like it has a bit of a comedic quality to it. It's just like, oh, look at the lady just spinning around, why?
Yeah. So I wanted to acknowledge that you brought an openness, whether whether that feels good to admit or not now or at the time, that supported a shift to be able to happen.
Yeah.
And what I find is like people who are tired of living their life the way they're living, even if they have tons of resistance, there's a tiny sliver of something that's open. Right? And they might not admit it. They might not want to admit it outwardly or even just to themselves. But like, they're there.
Yeah.
They're there. And they're taking it in. And one day, maybe they feel more receptive to it.
Yeah. Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
Well, I wonder, is there anything else you want to say about this topic before we do a closing practice?
Maybe just to reiterate the power of like holding both, right? The ability to look at and feel what's hard in the moment or in the past, and the ability to widen the lens to include where was there love and care or support, either during that hardship or in the aftermath. And what does it feel like to orient to and shift focus to some of that and see how that feels in the body, right? Maybe notice your patterns. Do you have a tendency to just focus on the hardship? Even like for many years, like I think I would have seen myself, like a strength in myself was I could overcome hardship and I could take a lesson out of it. And if I spoke about things, I would talk about it in that way. Never would I really talk about, oh, the love and care that was present for me at that time and in the aftermath was this. And like, let me tell you how it felt in my body to like recognize that love and care was there. That was not on my radar.
Can you imagine if that was the normal human way of remembering events? Wow.
I think I would actually remember a lot more events, because what I recognize is I don't remember a lot of things. I remember many things, but there's a lot of my life that I don't remember. Like I'll have friends say, hey, do you remember that time when we did this and this and this? And I'm like, I have no idea. I trust that it happened, but I have no idea. And I'm pretty sure I had a good time, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
And, I remember in more recent years, someone saying that when you have a stronger muscle to be present and be with different sensory experiences in the moment, you're likely to have a better memory. That makes sense.
It does,
right?
Yeah.
But like I had to cut off from sensory experience from a very young age in order to cope.
Yeah.
So it doesn't surprise me, like when you cut off from all these sensory experiences, that like you don't have the sensory to help you remember these things in the same way. And like I think back now, if we had been taught to remember moments in our life for like more holistically, more complete, I don't know what the word is, but like to remember what was hard and also remember the care and love that was there. Like it'd be like there's these little sweet little packages of life events we could carry along with us.
Yeah.
Seems very different. Then let me just bury them.
Yeah. Now the way you're saying this somehow is making me think that this is a natural follow through to where we're at with human evolution. Like the danger of the past is not the danger of the present. Like I'm talking prehistoric, right? We developed our brains and our memory patterns and our social patterns and our parenting patterns based on danger and fear and things that we need to protect ourselves from. And so that's the focus, right? Self-protection, self-preservation. And we're now in a different time of human experience where we can afford to not fear everything all the time, generally speaking. And so we need to build this muscle, this new neural pathway framework for ourselves and perhaps all of humanity for the future, if I could get a bit lofty, for how to remember and tread these neural pathways that are of joy and good feelings and pleasantness. And like it's time to grow that now.
Yeah, like we're not in prehistoric times, and many of us aren't living in present danger. Yeah, and yet there are still people who in present day do live that way. And even so, I think these practices can be helpful to build capacity to be with what's hard. Yeah. I remember, did you ever read Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl?
No.
That book was so meaningful to me, and I can't remember exactly, but like what I pulled from it is, a man who survived the Holocaust and people wondered how he managed to survive. And, I think his teachings were that you have to find a purpose to your pain. And I think he remembered his wife or child or family or something. Like he focused on something pleasant to be with the thing that was hard. And that is what helped him survive. Yeah. So he wasn't pretending he wasn't suffering every day. He was just also bringing along this other truth. Yeah. Which is there are people who love and care about me. Who I love and care about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi. Well, I wonder do you have a closing practice in mind, or do you want to walk us through something that will accrue us more of these warm, good feeling moments?
Well, I feel like the one we had in mind initially feels fitting right now, or at least fitting for my body.
Yeah.
Which is to connect to a sweet, gentle sigh. And it might not feel natural because it's not naturally occurring, but that's okay. Notice what it's like if you're open to it, to even bring on the feel or the sound of a sweet, gentle sigh and to see what happens in how your body feels. Oh, that feels like a little bit, like a little penny in the piggy bank of pleasantness.
Cute. Yeah.
I'm going to try it again. What I notice is how powerful sounds are. Right? There's something about those gentler exhales that for me are associated to, I can settle now. It's okay to settle. It's okay to soften. Those are not, speaking of like dangerous times, those are not sounds we associate with danger. And so that's interesting to like consciously recreate sounds that are more associated with like settling and safety and comfort.
Yeah. The associations are pretty neat. The first little sigh, I just notice a tonal inflection difference that gives my sighs quite different meaning and experience. So the first little gentle one is just like a relaxing, peaceful moment. If I have a cup in my hand and the sigh is a little bit more oomph, then it's the sign of a job well done. And now I get to relax after a job well done feeling.
Can I try it with the cup? Does that make a difference? Yeah, a job well done sigh has a different quality to it, a different sound. And a different, like after, like the landing is different. Yeah. Like the landing is like thump. I can like relax and let go now. It's like I can melt and soften into something different.
Yeah.
And what I think is really neat is we all experience it differently. Well, there might be some commonalities, but like that's what's fun about playing with it. Like when we suggested this as a practice, I didn't know how it was going to feel. I didn't know which things were going to sound which way. It's only through playing with it I'm like, oh, neat. I'm discovering something new that maybe I didn't have as much awareness of before. Oh, neat. Like I'm getting to feel something right now that I didn't feel any other time in today. Like no other time today did I have quite that feeling. And it was a pleasant one. So nice. I got an extra moment of pleasantness today. Yeah. That's nice. I'll take it.
Filling up that piggy bank. Thanks. Well, thank you, Gigi. Anything else you want to say?
I think that's good. I'm good.
Okay, good. Well, then we'll see you guys next time. Thank you for joining us. As always, please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.